Welcome to Conversations with CKG. My name is Sarah Jane Scoble, and I am the Director of Mental Health Education at the Cameron K. Gallagher Foundation. Conversations with CKG is our webinar series that seeks to turn the whispered and more shied away topics surrounding teen mental health into open and educational dialogue. Today, we're focusing on learning disabilities and mental health and educational therapy, resources that are available to students, and how caregivers and educators alike can advocate for the teens in their lives. So I am so excited to be joined by Susan Micari, who is a nationally recognized board-certified educational therapist and founder of Ed Therapy 360. So Susan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about educational therapy with you.
So I'm excited to share with our audience. And I know that we'll chat in a little bit about the work that you do at Ed Therapy 360 and all that you offer there. But I'd love if we could start, if you could just give me a little bit of your background. How did you get into educational therapy? How did this all start for you? What drew you into this?
Well, thank you. I was a teacher with a learning specialist's, reading specialist's degree and certification in New York City. And I opened a private practice part-time while I was working at school. And I asked myself when I was considering going into full-time private practice, because I was getting very busy, what is it exactly that I do? What makes this different from tutoring? And I asked myself, if I had to define what I do, it would be educational therapy. I wonder if there's a patent on that term. So I looked it up online and discovered, well, no, there's no patent on a term, but there was this national organization out of California called the Association of Educational Therapists. And I took a conference with them in Boston of that year. It was 2005. And fell in love. The leadership and the board members there were the kind of teachers, you go to school hoping you're going to meet. And the principles and the addition to the skill set of, say, a reading specialist was phenomenal. It's a psych-minded approach to helping people with learning disabilities, language-based learning disabilities of all kinds. And it also focuses on the parts of the relationship between a teacher and a student, or a client and an ed therapist, that doesn't get taught to teachers, but gets taught to psychologists. For instance, what is it that makes what they call a therapeutic alliance fruitful for the client, and what doesn't? What happens when you feel all kinds of strange feelings when you're talking to a troubled kid? How do we look at that and interpret that? So that training in basic transference and countertransference, to use the psych terms for it, is immensely helpful for us, so that we can interpret what we feel coming from the student and make use of it, rather than to fall into it or to judge a student, but to be able to understand what is it about this child's experience that's leading them to think this way, behave this way, believe what they believe about their inability to do school. And so that, in addition to our clinical skills at diagnostic testing for kids with disabilities, our work interpreting the reports of neuropsychological evaluations and putting them in real language, simple language for parents and students, our ability to advise neuropsych testers and psychologists on what kind of recommendations make sense according to our lenses as teaching professionals, what would be most helpful to the child in that school, given the ways in which the child is not meeting expectations, or the mismatch between the student and the school, or the pain that the child is in because of a cultural mismatch with school or for being misunderstood by teachers. Any of those things can cause a child to have a miserable experience. And as you know, it's not that easy to get fired from school. You're you're stuck. So for us, we serve not only as expert teachers on learning disabilities to clients so we can help them overcome dyslexia. I can teach anybody to read. We can help them overcome demoralized disorganization. We know how to do that. We know how to help ADHD people start their work and use a calendar and get better organized. But we're also very good at communicating intergroup. We are a little entity together with our student. We're a little circle. The student and their parents are a little circle. The student and their school are a little circle. And we need to be case managers so that we can communicate with each of these groups the knowledge that they need and to communicate successfully and empathetically. For instance, most of us are very good at letting teachers know we are not there to judge anyone, but we are there to answer questions about a student's difficulties and to ask the teacher, who is an expert in her or his own right and knows that kid the way we don't, tell us what you want to see happen for this kid. What are the kid's biggest needs? What are you seeing that's troubling you, or what are you seeing that we can praise in our sessions so that the student has a better chance of repeating that accomplishment. And in that way we can form an alliance with teachers, an alliance with administrators and with parents. We can often explain to parents, how will this learning disability look at major growth points in the student's life? Major inflection points, like fifth grade's a tough year. Standard jump, right? Ninth grade could be a trick. 11th grade is absolutely a difficult year because of all the demands on students. And then going off to college, what would a learning disability that's been successfully remediated in high school look like in college? Will it come back? Well, it's always there, but as a very fine doctor once told me, when we were thinking together about these things, normal is handling your stuff. So teaching at each point, we can say to a student, yeah, it feels like your skills are falling apart again, but it's temporary. Let's look at what the demands are now for your independent functioning at college, for instance, or in this specialized high school, and then let's work on meeting them, because you will be able to. And then our job is also to help, if there is a real mismatch, is to help clarify that. Sometimes parents have a hard time realizing that the child has a learning disability. That can take years. And if it does, sometimes it's because it hurts the parents too much to face it. But yet, of course, they need a safe place to express their distress, their pain, maybe even anger, their sadness, so that they can get behind the child that they have, the child with all the positive qualities that this kid has, and free up some mental, physical, financial resources to help the child. And so we serve a function of a safe space for parents to express their fears, and they often have many, and they often feel very alone. They, of course, every parent wants a perfect life for their child and doesn't want the child to suffer ever, but life is life. And then one of our biggest functions is to be a cheerleader for our students, to celebrate their victories, to explain their victories to them, to help them not be afraid of their victories. Some students, when they start to do better, go, I don't want to do this. It's uncomfortable. And you can say, it is for now, but you will get used to it. And I see growth. I see real character. You have developed, and not everyone does because life isn't fair. You've developed character handling the difficulties and challenges that this learning difference presents to you. And I applaud you, because not everyone can, but you can. And so these are the kinds of things. And then, we need to be pretty good at teaching reading, writing, math. We need to know our science and history. We aren't tutors. We aren't going to reinforce curriculum and then say, here's how you write this paper. We're going to help the student learn how to do it themselves. That's it. Independent functioning is our goal, and our ethical standard has to adhere to that. It's a do no harm profession, and the standards are high, and it takes a lot to, it takes a lot to get your credentials.
Oh, I can imagine. I can imagine.
Yeah, the 4-hour ethics exam is a biggie.
Oh. Well, there were a couple of things you mentioned that I think it's just really important to reiterate. And one is that you all are working together as a team,
Yes.
right? And to show the student that everybody's on their side, right?
Yes.
This is only for their benefit to work with their teachers and their counselors and their parents or caregivers, just all for the common good of that student, right?
Yes, but if somebody isn't on the student's side, it's probably the kind of issue that has escaped their awareness. I've had teachers judge kids harshly, and for those teachers, I realized they need an ally more than anybody because they're anxious. They aren't sure they can reach that student, and so it's easier to say that the student's, all wrong. So they need help too, but it's very rare these days that you run into a teacher who's old-fashioned enough to think that way.
No, I think that's so important. And then also, you mentioned breaking things down into common terms, right? Because it can be kind of daunting to look at this from the outside in and be like, oh my gosh, what do all these words mean? What do I need to do? So to really make it, understandable, not only for the student, but for the teacher, right? Or for their parent.
Very much so. We often write an abstract for teachers if their learning specialists don't do it already, based on a report that gives you some strengths and weaknesses and some accommodations that they're entitled to. The reports are often written for other professionals, but it's too bad because the parents pay for them. So explaining as many times as it takes is something that we can do, but also the doctor who does the testing should explain it as many times as the parents require in plain language. That's one of their jobs too. And so we can, again, work together to make sure that parents are taking in info over time. It might not happen all at once. These reports tend to be 20 or 30 pages long with all kinds of data in them, and that can make somebody feel overwhelmed.
Definitely, which I think also plays a little bit into the stigma, right, surrounding any sort of therapy. It just can seem so intimidating. And so to make it comprehensible and comfortable for everybody is just so important.
And normal. Nobody has a perfect um, psychoeducational profile. Nobody's good at everything. We all need help in various areas. So yes, we want to normalize this, and we want to take away the stigma as best we can. Our organization started in California, where they like to say everybody's a therapist. So they don't, but we spend a lot of time trying to help parents be unafraid of the term educational therapy, because that makes people feel like something might really be wrong, and quite often something is, but therapy only means an approach to health. So we're doing our best to make a student approach good educational health, the ability to learn how to learn and to learn their content on their own. That's all we're doing. And most students have the intelligence to achieve that, even if they have suffered because of learning difference or because of being misunderstood or for any number of reasons, such as there is such a thing as educational trauma. Sometimes a child is so misunderstood in a school or on a playground that their psychological health is compromised. Bullying being one of the main examples, right? So bullying isn't an educational therapist's province, but if I heard about that, I would tell my student, I wish to tell, because your safety is a concern of mine, this is something I want to tell your parents. And if, with your permission, I'm going to tell your therapist, your psychotherapist, or doctor as well, because it's not fair and it's dangerous, and we want to do something about it. Your mom can take it up with the school, um, unless they would like me to do that, and I might do that with them or with you.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that goes back to being on their team, right?
Yeah, very much
So,
so.
yes. Well, and I know you touched on this just a little bit. We've talked about learning disabilities and learning trauma. So is there a connection between learning disadvantages and disabilities and mental health challenges among
Yes,
students?
yes, very, very often, most of the time, anxiety travels with a learning disability or a difference like autism spectrum, which we would think of as a neurodivergent issue, not necessarily a disability. But anxiety travels with anything that makes a student different from their peers. It's very hard to avoid. And one of our most important functions is to say, if we think that a psychotherapist is a needed allied professional for this student's help, that they get referred to a good one who is a good team player and might also be very helpful in understanding. So anxiety is often there. Sometimes anxiety disorders accompany a learning disability. For instance, ADHD and anxiety go together. OCD is an anxiety adaptation. Um, and that can be something that causes a student to really feel different from other people. So there are a number of things. Depression is something that we watch for. In fact, a good psychiatrist, before they um, prescribe stimulant meds, is going to check for depression and do their best to evaluate whether what's happening to the child's concentration is that they're depressed. Because it looks different in children sometimes. You know?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So I think that there's definitely that connection there. And you've talked about some of the resources available to students when they're going through something or dealing with maybe a learning disability or that anxiety. But what are some ways that you might recommend parents help their teens or caregivers help their teens at home? Are there some things, some proactive approaches that they can take within their home to help their teens as they navigate this?
Yes, there are many. There are many books geared toward parents that have to do with what if your learning disabled child is contemplating college, or how to help set up an environment at home that's conducive to study. There are many resources and books. There are places like the ADHD websites, the LD.org websites. Understood is an excellent resource online to get quick and easy information about ways to help your students at home. A good ed therapist also should be able to help the parent cope a little bit better with their own worry and claim it for themselves. If Because children pick up on how parents feel instantly. And sometimes a child will feel the parent's anxiety and it'll be more than that child can deal with. So for a parent who can say, wow, I get so worried about you because I love you and I don't want you to suffer for a single day in your life. But I could see that you're having trouble with school and it scares me. That gives the child a chance to say, okay, mom, you know, I understand. That's your your feeling, not my feeling.
Mhm.
Okay, and then the parent can say, that's right, you know what, I'm going to get a little help. I'm going to talk to your ed therapist and set up some sessions so I could understand what you're going through better. and so I know what the roadmap should be this semester to help, because I don't want to get in your way. I know you're getting independent now. You don't want me hovering over you, but I can't sit around and do nothing. Ah, you know, so that's at least a way for a parent to say that I own this. These feelings are mine, and the child goes, "What a relief." And then you can help a parent. You can say, "Listen, let's set up the monthly calendar. Your son or daughter has to do it, but let me show you how it should look and where it should be placed in the room, so that every time the student passes it, they see all of the appointments that they always have every week, and all of their free time and their sacred fun time that we're never going to mess with. Yes, they're going to do sports, and yes, they're going to see their friends. They're not going to be chained to a chair ever." And then we can say, "Where's the free time?" And then I can reassure a parent, "I'm going to teach your son or daughter how long a half hour really is, because I bet they don't know. And we're going to use a timer. We're going to see how long is a half an hour really. I might use a visual timer like this. And when that goes off, we're stopping. And then sometimes the student can say, "My homework will take 3 hours and I will never, ever, ever get it finished." And you're like, "Okay, I'm going to set the timer for half an hour. Which piece should we do first? What's the most important thing on the menu today?" And when the student picks it, you assume it's a pretty good choice. You go, "Right, that's the one that's concerning. How do we start? Do you remember how? You do? Go ahead and start. If you want me to help you with a sentence starter for each paragraph, I will help you make those. But let's see." And then a half an hour goes by, the bell rings, and you go, "Well, how much should we get done?" And then the student says, "It's about half done, isn't it?" I say, "Yes, it really is. You don't have that much longer to do. Why don't we do a different piece of work now for our last half hour, and you'll be able to do this one on your own. You'll finish this on your own. If you get stuck, it's not due for 3 days. You show it to me in 2 days' time, and we'll go over where did it get sticky, and then I'll help you with that. Then you'll know how to finish it. And over time, you'll be able to do this by yourself, but not yet. I'll help you for now." And that would be a typical, way to start helping someone engage with their work. And then the parent, you can reassure, you get to step back from the struggle over homework. I'm going to take that on, and it will be easier for me because I'm just a friendly professional. You're a mom, you're a mom and dad. So there are many more feelings that get engaged. So it's okay. You step away, I'm going to handle it. And I'll show you what I'm doing every step of the way. Every week we can meet for a couple minutes. I'll show you what we're doing so you'll know what needs to be practiced. And that would be a typical way of trying to be a good ally to a parent to help them do their job.
Absolutely. And I think again that just it shows how approachable it can be, right?
Yes.
And I love the idea of the visual timer, and it really starts to give the student back that independence that they truly need.
Yes, the thought of being chained to a chair for 3 hours, it would make anyone want to give up. And so our students often have unrealistic senses of time and how long things will take. And that's one of the most relieving early lessons you can teach somebody who's disorganized to internalize.
Definitely. Well, it seems like you gave us a glimpse there of how you might work with parents. And something that we talk about at CKG is how intimidating it can be to start therapy, right? With the stigma surrounding any sort of therapy. So what is your initial approach if a student is recommended for educational therapy, or if you are going to start with, a new client? How does it look for them when they start with you? What could a student expect?
Well, we have a routine. Of course, in our interview, we will have decided if they want to call me their educational therapist or their coach.
Okay.
If they like coach better, they can say coach. And I've listened to the parents tell me in detail what they see and what they think the problems are and what they think the strengths are of their their son or daughter. And then I ask the student in that same early intake interview to what their goal might be. What would they like to get done if we worked together? And according to their desires, I start to create some early lessons that will give them quick successes. If a student says, I have to get organized, or I hate reading, I'll say, wow, that's important. Do you mind if we roam around and find out which ways or why reading is not fun? Why is it hard? Because if I know that, I think can teach you how to make it easier and better. And things that are easy, we usually like better. So if I can make it easier, you'll like it more. And maybe that's going to be it. Maybe the focus is reading for a dyslexic student, or comprehension for a student who works very hard at reading and really hates it. You know, so in our early sessions, there's a few minutes. Well, in all sessions, how are you? What's been going on this week? What's new? And what feedback have you been getting on your work? How the lesson that I gave you come across? How was that for you? I usually do that at the end of any session. What did we learn today? How was that? What was easy? What was hard? What was clear? And then we might say, what's the most important thing to get started on today? Well, I have this big paper and I'm really scared. Okay, let's, did the teacher give you um, a way of breaking down the assignment over the next 10 days so you can do it? No. Oh, okay, we can do that. We're going to set, maybe we'll do a little backward scheduling from the day you hand it in to today to see what things we're going to do each day to get this done. And then, of course, if you don't know how to do them, I'll work with you. I'll show you how. And then if you like the way I've shown you, you can do that. If you don't, we'll come up with something else that will work for you. So it's, you try to work very closely with the student without judgment to say, this has to be custom work. We're going to find a way to work that is just for you. It's like Orange County Chopper. We're going to make a special motion just for you. And that's how it is. It's going to be all your own. So that's how we try to do it. And then we get on with it because there's always more work to do than you can fit into an hour.
Yes, yes. So, well, I love that you customize it so much, right? Because that's something we also talk about is, we offer positive coping skills and different ways to relieve stress, and we don't all do it the same way, right? One positive coping skill might work for someone else and not for me.
Right.
And so I think to have the different ways to approach the work and different methods for students to get things done so that they can truly find what works for them is so important.
I think so too. And then you want to do everything in your power to understand your client, the family, and the student, and to be a good professional friend, which is to be supremely helpful, to be a very, very good teacher, and also to stay out of the way of that student's development. You don't want to force them into anything. You don't want to do things for them. You want to always keep in mind that the goal is for the student to leave your practice and to leave it stronger. So we do our best to keep our eye on that goal and to make it easy when the time comes for the student to leave our practice, that student can leave and say goodbye in a nice way and feel proud and ready to go forward to the next phase of their educational lives.
Yes, absolutely. Equipped with all the tools that they might need.
Yep.
Yes.
As many as we know and some that we don't, we'll find out.
Yes.
We'll learn something new together.
We're all always learning, right?
Yeah, very much
Yes.
so. Well, it's the wonderful thing about being human, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Well, Susan, thank you so much. I think we've covered quite a bit today. I always love speaking with you. But
Sarah,
it
thanks.
was
Thank
it
you.
was Wonderful to learn a little bit more about the work that you do and how, educators, therapists, parents, caregivers, we can all work to support the teens in our lives and to help equip them with the tools needed for their educational health and their mental health.
Well, thank you, Sarah. It's a pleasure to talk to you as always. Thank you for all of your kindness, and I've truly enjoyed talking with you today.
Well, thank you for being on with us, Susan, and thank you to our audience for joining us for Conversations with CKG. We are looking forward to announcing some exciting changes coming to our Conversations with CKG series. So just keep an eye out on our newsletter and our social media in the coming months for more information about that. And we will share this recording as well as information about Ed Therapy 360 in our August newsletter and on our social media platforms. So just stay tuned for that as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.